Brought to you by Charity Mobile. Switch to the phone company that supports your beliefs. All plans start under $50 before taxes and surcharges. Use promo code TRADITION at CharityMobile.com for a special offer.
You may have heard that at St. Peter's Basilica this weekend, there was a little event. And I'm not talking about the canonizations of Carlo Acutis and the other saint whose name I can't pronounce right now because it's not in front of me. I want to ruin his name. But there were two saints canonized this weekend. I'm not talking about that. I am talking about a little pilgrimage led by Outreach Catholic. And Outreach is an organization founded by Father James Martin, FJ. It's a organization dedicated to essentially getting the church to change its teachings on morality related to that sin and that group that James Martin has a weird interest in for a Catholic priest. And this event was a little bit more than a pilgrimage, as you are about to see. It sparked outrage when it happened. Before I get to that, I want to get to some good news. People ask me to report some good news. Well, I do when it happens. So if you like this kind of content, hit like and subscribe if you can. It does help. So here's some good news for you. For those looking for a sign of hope under Pope Leo, posted by Peter Kwasniewski on his Facebook page, there is the Peregrinatio ad Petri Sedem 2025. This is a pilgrimage here. As Peter Kwasniewski says, after several years of banishment from St. Peter's, the Summorum Pontificum pilgrimage has once again been given permission this October, meaning next month, to offer a traditional solemn pontifical mass, which is the highest form of the traditional Latin mass, at the altar of the chair with Cardinal Raymond Leo Burke as celebrant. Deo gratias, says Dr. Kwasniewski. What that means is there's going to be the most solemn form of the traditional mass offered at St. Peter's Basilica by Cardinal Raymond Leo Burke, with the approval of the Vatican. Since Summorum Pontificum, this has not been allowed. So there you have it. That's some good news for those who ask for it. And you can take that as a sign, if you like, of maybe a change in direction, at least in terms of, I don't know, toleration of those who are on the outs in the church at the moment. But those who are not on the outs, but certainly have come out, here comes Michael Haynes, reporting on that group that I'm alluding to here. He's the editor per Mariam, the Substack, and the senior Vatican correspondent for LifeSite. He's an accredited member of the Holy See Press Corps. Video of the James Martin Jubilee pilgrimage at the Vatican today from the Associated Press. Bishop Francesco Savino, vice president of the Italian bishops, said mass for the group and reportedly with Pope Leo's expressed approval. Take all the time you need to understand the implications of that. The group carried, of course, their co-opted multicolor symbol cross into the Vatican. We're going to mute this just in case there's something said here in Italian that I didn't quite catch in with. That happened. That happened. So I'm going to go here to Deacon Nick Donnelly. He had some thoughts. He has firmly joined the I'm not giving any more chances side of things. It says, two James Martin type men entered St. Peter's Basilica through the holy door holding hands, one displaying the logo F the rules, but it said the word. Open defiance of God's commandments enabled by Pope Leo XIV, Archbishop Rino Fisichella, and Cardinal Gresh. They are openly desecrating the whole purpose of the holy door, which represents our Lord Jesus Christ as the door to eternal life. See John chapter 10, verse 9. Instead, unrepentant mortal sin is the door to eternal damnation. And I'm supposed to pretend that this church is in continuity with the Catholic Church of Pope St. Peter, Pope St. Gregory the Great, Pope St. Pius V, and Pope St. Pius X. And there's that picture floating around that you've probably seen. Yes, these are people flaunting the rules and being openly just against everything the church teaches in St. Peter's Basilica. Fred Simon reminding Deacon Nick that we're supposed to zip it when we see these things, that we shouldn't point out obvious evil things being done or allowed to be done because we might be given some crumbs of the traditional mass being offered in a little more freedom than we have now. It's a deal with the devil that's being offered by some. Now, to make this compound this is Pastor Jimmy Martin himself, Mr. FJ. Here's what he had to say. Incredible. Bishop Francesco Savino, vice president of the Italian Bishops' Conference, to a packed Jubilee Mass for these Catholics and their families and friends at the Church of the Gesù in Rome, which stopped his homily with a minute of applause. He got a standing ovation for this, ladies and gentlemen. Quoting the bishop, "It was the year when land was returned to those from whom it had been taken. The Jubilee was the remission of debts and the liberation of slaves and prisoners. The Jubilee was the time to free the oppressed and restore dignity to those who had been denied it. Brothers and sisters, and I say this with emotion, it is time to restore dignity to everyone, especially those who have been denied it." End quote. That is the bishop who, with the Pope's blessing, offered the Mass for this pilgrimage. That is, as Lepanto Institute said elsewhere, when they reposted this themselves, a declaration of war on the church. After all, what they're saying here, what the bishop is saying here is that we need to restore dignity to everyone who has been denied it by the church. The spotless bride of Christ has committed a sin and is no longer the spotless bride of Christ by unjustly denying the sacraments to an entire group of people. These are heretics. That's what these people are when they allow this stuff. Unquestionable. James Martin in his own thread said, Bishop Savino also said that after he told Pope Leo about this Mass, Leo said, "Go, celebrate the Mass with them." And you might think, well, James Martin's lying. I've said this before, and I will say it again. James Martin can't lie about this stuff. He cannot put words in the Pope's mouth and say it publicly because he has such a high profile that if he were to do it, there would be a phone call made, at the very least, from Rome to the Jesuit Superior General, and the Jesuit Superior General would have a very hard talk with Father James Martin, FJ. That's what would happen. He would get punished for it. James Martin knows that too. Do not think him so dumb as to make things up and put words in the Pope's mouth. The man is very, very intelligent. Take him very seriously. But this isn't all. See, James Martin gave a talk with a panel, right? There he is, giving a talk, got a panel of people there. No big deal, right? Well, let's take a look here, because over here you have the profiles of the various people who are giving a talk. But one of them is highlighted. By the way, notice the Synod on Synodality logo there? Curious. This person is one of those people who is confused about the immutable nature of the flesh. It's a dude who somehow got the weird idea in their mind that it's a lady. All right. And a Eucharistic minister at a parish. So we're giving now a platform on church property in the Vatican for a panel with people who are denying the laws of God and saying God made mistakes, who represent the virulent ideology of the time that has been condemned by virtually every pope who's been alive for it, and represents a grave undermining of civilization itself. That's James Martin, the man who will never be punished for the things he does. Now, I'm going to show you this. Secular media picked up on this. This is from posted by a local news source somewhere in the United States, but they're using the AP here. The photo comes from the AP. So this is basically from the Associated Press. After all, the article is written by Nicole Winfield, Associated Press writer. The James Martin type Catholics make Holy Year pilgrimage to Rome and celebrate a new feeling of welcome. Really playing on the spotless bride of Christ is no longer spotless and has committed a sin thing that they push. Gotta love the jacket this guy's wearing. The article is very short. Over 1,000 of these Catholics and their families participated in a Holy Year pilgrimage to Rome on Saturday, celebrating a new level of acceptance in the Catholic Church after long feeling shunned and crediting Pope Francis with the change. Some wept as they walked through the holy door of St. Peter's Basilica and the rite of passage of Holy Year pilgrims. They said the moment they felt important, historic even, in the life of the church and their community. It just felt epic, like I was able to touch the hand of God, said Justin Del Rosario, who carried a big wooden crucifix across the threshold of the holy door with a group of pilgrims from the United States that included the person that they call their husband. Let's pause here. You notice they say it's a big wooden crucifix. Well, I showed it to you. It was painted 6 different colors. It's a political symbol. Several of these types of groups participated in the pilgrimage, which was listed in the Vatican's official calendar of events for the Holy Year, the once every quarter century celebration of Catholicism. Vatican organizers stressed that the listing in the calendar didn't signal endorsement or sponsorship, but was a logistical tool to help organizers and pilgrims alike. Sure. The main sponsor of the pilgrimage was an Italian group for advocacy on this, Jonathan's Tent, but other groups participated, including a group of confused women from southern Rome, Dignity USA, and Outreach, another U.S. group, as well as the Brazilian national network of these Catholic groups. I was here 25 years ago at the last Holy Year with a contingent of these people from the U.S., and we were actually detained as a threat to the Holy Year programs, said Dignity USA's Marianne Duty Burke. Let's pause here. Detained 25 years ago when they tried this. That would have been, well, Pope John Paul II was Pope. And while Joseph Ratzinger was the prefect for the Congregation of the Doctrine of the Faith. They handled that appropriately, I think. Let's continue. To be now invited to walk through the holy door of St. Peter's Basilica, fully recognized as who we are and the gifts we bring to the church. And then we have both our faith and our identities combined as a day of great celebration and hope, she said. They do not have their faith and identities combined, because if they did, they would be members of Courage International. Courage is an organization dedicated to people of the same, we'll say, inclination as this group of people, but they don't identify with their sin. They recognize the sin. They very much recognize the sin and the sinful inclinations they have. They recognize it as just a cross they have to carry. And so instead, they choose to carry their cross. They do not embrace their sins. They reject them. They recognize that they are something they'll have to deal with their whole lives, and they conform themselves to the traditional teachings of the church on this matter. Their name is Courage, and it's a very, very good name for that organization. These are people who are embracing the opportunity God has given them to be an example of heroic virtue in a time when the world is desperately trying to tell them that there's nothing wrong. If that was the pilgrimage that was going on, we might not even be talking about this right now. But instead, this is the group Welcome to Rome. To now be invited to walk through the holy door of St. Peter's Basilica, fully recognized as who we are and the gifts we bring to the church, and that we have both our faith and our identities combined, is a day of great celebration and hope, this person said. Pope Leo XIV celebrated a special Jubilee audience Saturday at the Vatican for all pilgrim groups in Rome this weekend, but made no special mention of them. Many of the pilgrims attributed their feeling of welcome to Francis. More than any of his predecessors, Francis distinguished himself with a message of welcome. From his 2013 quip, "Who am I to judge?" at a purportedly disordered priest, to his decision to allow priests to blame these kinds of couples. He never changed church teaching saying the acts in question are intrinsically disordered, but during his 12-year papacy, Francis met with their advocates, ministered to a community of confused people, and in a 2023 interview with the Associated Press declared that being like this is not a crime. Yeah, that's the message Rome is sending right now. Now, there were attempts to stop this. Diane Montagna, Vatican journalist, if you were watching my coverage of the Synod on Synodality, you'd recognize Diane Montagna as being the journalist who was in the press pool asking very hard questions of the synodal representatives and putting them on the spot. She posted this to her official X account. This could have been prevented, but nobody cared. Last Wednesday, I asked Vatican spokesman Matteo Bruni what the Vatican's policy for this pilgrimage would be, quote, regarding carrying their co-opted symbol and their flags, banners, t-shirts, and other means of messaging, noting that the story could potentially dominate the news cycle rather than the canonizations, which is exactly what's happened, folks. He said he would check into it, but in the end, he didn't reply, despite several follow-ups. Last Friday morning, I called the Vatican's Dicastery for Evangelization, which organizes the Jubilee, with the same question. The person who responded said, yes, there shouldn't be any problem with this, but wanted to confirm it with his superior. He returned to our call saying that no flags, banners, etc. would be allowed. Only the official Jubilee cross, would be permitted both on the Via della Concezione and going through the Holy Door. Also for security reasons, he said. On Saturday, I went to the event and asked the organizers if flags, banners, crosses were allowed. He said no. An official from the Dicastery for Evangelization was present in Piazza Pia, where the pilgrimages begin. He didn't seem to take kindly to me asking why this multicolored cross was being carried. In the end, one man carried that cross, even into the basilica. Several held their organization banners, not large but clearly visible, given to them by the organizers. A Belgian priest wore a really diabolical flag draped around his back as a long cape, and another man held a large multicolored flag on one hand to the delight of eager photographers. I asked several of the Jubilee volunteers overseeing the event along the Via della Concezione if there was a rule about crosses, flags, banners for the event. They all told me the same thing. They didn't know and weren't told anything in this regard. So there may have been rules, but in the end, they weren't enforced. In light of the disturbing photos that surfaced yesterday from inside St. Peter's Basilica via the remnant, I wrote to Matteo Bruni asking if the Vatican will be issuing an acknowledgement that this should not have been permitted and apologizing for the scandal it has caused. This was entirely preventable. Here are some of the photos. Some of which you've seen. You've probably seen this one floating around. Father Kalchik, if you remember him, canceled by Cardinal Supich 6 years ago now, I think, responded to this saying all those responsible for the sacrilege need to be defrocked, demoted, and given a kick to the curb. Christ died to redeem man from sin and death. Christian discipleship begins with repentance and contrition, not with some sort of celebration of sin. Pope Leo himself should condemn what took place yesterday. That is exactly correct. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what happened. Because this is what people are talking about now. Yeah, you're going to see a lot of stuff about now St. Carlo Acutis. But this is overshadowing those canonizations. Because Pope Leo gave his express blessing for this. Oops. Let me know what you think of this in the comments, please. Like and subscribe if you haven't. It does help. Sharing this on social media helps a lot too. We've got a prayer request here. Please pray for my parents' house insurance issue. That's a big deal. Please pray for this person's intentions. They are a channel member who have used their channel membership perk. You get, if you're a member of any YouTube channel, for that channel in a live stream, you get a free super chat once a month. Use it. You're paying for it already. It doesn't cost you anything extra to use it. And thank you for being a member for 13 months. If you want to support the work we do here at Return to Tradition, there are options in the description box below or that subscribe plus button. That's how he got his free super chat. Speaking of super chat, Damien Keller says, Leo said he would continue the pathway set by Francis in so many words. Why should anyone be surprised? I no longer am surprised by any of this. I didn't think it'd be quite this in your face, but I'm no longer surprised. I'm curious, though, what you generally think of this. Let me know in the comments, please. And as always, pray for the church, and especially for the Pope. I'm not trying to stir you up against him. This stuff's all over the news. They're doing a good job of all that stuff themselves. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.